Avatar is a great film. Oh, you disagree? Cope, because you're a Weenie Hut Jr. This film masterfully handles well-defined and logically written characters that all have clear-cut motivations, solid personality traits, character quirks, and a multitude of interpersonal relationships. On top of this, the brilliant world building of the film, creating fictional languages, ecology, and even crafting a distant world that could possibly exist to some degree, creates a feeling of true believability. A YouTuber by the name of Local has a fantastic video on how this film is downright excellent, and it is a perfect defense of this film. He discusses how much of the criticisms levied towards the film are rooted in either misremembering information or actively choosing to misrepresent the story at hand, which, I don't know about you, but I consider the latter to be disingenuous as and indicative of people being insecure over a film about Papa Smurf and his merry band of misfits. Hey, how could such a simple film be so successful? How is this the most successful film of all time? Clearly something so simple could not be good. Simple films are bad. Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas. Yeah, simple means bad? So Star Wars is just a shitty sci-fi knockoff of old western, samurai films, and Arthurian myth? Indiana Jones was just a generic adventure film in the vein of 1930s adventure serials? Black Panther was literally just Lion King but with people. Nobody in their right mind would ever say things like this. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that nobody is allowed to dislike Avatar. You can like or dislike whatever the hell you want for whatever reason. Do you not like this film because you hate the color blue? That's entirely valid, but this film is not bad because of the color blue. God, no. That mindset is antithetical to objective analysis. Before I go any further, I have to preface, films can be objectively discussed. I don't know why people think otherwise at this point. You can look at a script, see what adds up and what does not. Inconsistencies, illogical characterization, and full-blown plot holes are all objective flaws in a story, and while Avatar does have the occasional moment of a character being uncharacteristically naive or lackadaisical, the film handles most interactions, characters, and plot points with the utmost care. And that's what I want to discuss today. How there is one scene in Avatar that, upon my rewatch of the film, revealed itself to be a perfect showcase of the brilliant writing of this film. The first flight. The scene starts with a few teenage Na'vi, S.E.A, and Jake Sully riding on dire horses on the side of a cliff, thus showcasing the danger inherent in this ritual, plummeting to their deaths. Jake informs the audience via narration that this is one of the tests that all young Na'vi hunters have to pass.
Learning to ride an icon. We call them banshees. It's the test every young hunter has to pass. So? But to do that, you gotta go where the banshees are. Hoorah.
Now, just a side note, I really find the video logs that Jake does to be a very creative way of creating an in-universe reason for a voiceover. Just a fun trick. Back to the scene at hand. The next little bit is just visually showcasing the danger present. There's this big misnomer in the world of media discussion of show don't tell. The idea is that as much of the story should be conveyed via the visuals, with minimal dialogue. I call bullshit on that, given that human language is the single most effective tool our species has ever created. Now, this is what that phrase should mean. A showcase of a sense of danger? Don't just tell me over and over again how something is dangerous. Show the audience what danger is present. And, as another side note, this would still be written in the script, and would be considered writing. As such, we see the Na'vi climbing a large vine. The floating mountains are up ahead, and S.E.A instructs them to jump and grab a vine of one of the mountains. They run across the large vines connecting the mountains, and through caves, building up to the beautiful sight of endless floating mountains, and flying banshees everywhere. Neytiri flies in, as, thus far, she's been instructed with showing Jake the ways of the Na'vi. S.E.A has shown nothing but disdain for Jake until this point, and as such, keeping consistent with his character, he orders that Jake will perform the ritual first, since it can be fatal. Jake is dead set on winning the trust of the Na'vi, so he obliges. Neytiri is being supportive of Jake the whole time, which is built on how her and Jake spent 3 months slowly getting to know each other and falling in love with each other. She tells Jake that he has to choose an Ikron, but he has to be fast in order to seal the bond. The stakes are high, either tame an Ikron and go forward with the goal of becoming one of the Na'vi, or die. Jake tries to test the waters with multiple Ikron, but once one shows signs of being tameable, Jake makes his move. Jake wrestles with the Ikron as S.E.A laughs at Jake nearly dying, once again showing that S.E.A genuinely does not care if Jake dies or not, which does come back later in the film. Jake, ever adaptable and quick thinking, manages to tame the Ikron. One criticism I see of this film is the notion that Jake is just miraculously good at everything, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Jake is naive and out of his element, yes, but he is also willing to learn and try new things. His character is not the blank slate many detractors of this film would try and claim he is. Who Jake really is a clever and open-minded person who, unlike the rest of the RDA operatives, does not have a stick up his ass. The critical flaw of nearly everyone else in this film is their stubbornness, but Jake makes the perfect foil. Neytiri encourages Jake to take his Ikran for the first flight, which will complete the ritual, and as he does this, he plummets down the mountain on his Ikran. They scrape alongside the cliff faces, but Jake finally tells his Ikran to shut up and fly straight. Now, we get to the really juicy part of the scene. One that I think packs a ton of character work into a relatively short period of time. As Jake is flying his Ikran, he's using earthly military terminology to instruct the Ikran. This is a very nice touch to add, helping hammer home his experience in the Marines. S.E.A. still hates Jake, so he disapproves of the other hunters cheering him on, but Neytiri joyfully joins him in flight. The two fly across the skies, reminiscent of the Define dancing scene from WALL-E. As the sun begins to set, the hunters all fly together, but Jake and Neytiri play around with each other as they fly, to S.E.A.'s dismay. We cut to another day where Jake and Neytiri are flying once again, showing how close they feel to each other while embarking on the freeing adventure of flight. The two fly to the Tree of Souls, as we cut to Grace and Trudy explaining the unique property of the Tree of Souls. This will come back later in the film, and is both used by the Na'vi as a safe haven after the destruction of Home Tree, due to its cultural significance, but also used for its magnetic properties in order to confuse RDA navigational technology.
The Tree of Souls. Eywa Ramunon. It's their most sacred place. See the flux vortex in these false color images?
Yeah, that's what messes up my instruments.
There is something really interesting going on in there biologically. I would die to get samples. Outsiders are strictly forbidden. You lucky swine.
And, right after this, we cut to Jake flying with Neytiri once more as we get the voiceover.
I was a stone-cold aerial hunter. Death from above. Only problem is, you're not the only one.
As they are ambushed by the Leonopteryx. They narrowly escape, but being brought together through their shared love of adventure, they both begin to laugh. We fade from the Leonopteryx flying away to the skull of an ancient one being illuminated by a campfire. Neytiri explains to Jake that the creature is called the Turuk in Na'vi culture, and that the rider of the creature is called the Turuk Makto, a great warrior that united the clans during a supposed time of great sorrow. This, of course, comes back later, as Jake tames the Turuk in order to win the trust of Neytiri again in an attempt to help them fight back against the RDA. And as we go from this beautiful scene, we are abruptly shot back to reality, with the oppressive world of the RDA back into view as Jake wakes up. And Jake is back in his wheelchair. A minute ago he was soaring across the sky, free as could be, but returned to the life of oppression and claustrophobia. Jake reminisces over the past 3 months and reconsiders his whole role within the RDA's plans. So, what can we learn from how this scene is constructed? Well, within these 13 minutes, we get tons of great character moments, explorations of the lore, setups, and payoffs, and the icing on top of the cake, just a visually and audibly beautiful scene. In the realm of character moments, the 3 major players in the scene are Jake, Neytiri, and S.E.A., with Grace and Trudy having brief but crucial roles in expository dialogue. Jake is trying to win the trust of the Na'vi, but has fallen in love with both their culture and Neytiri. This scene is what cements his love for their way of life, as with the scene after where he visits the Tree of Souls with Neytiri and hears the voices of Na'vi's souls. Neytiri was tasked with showing Jake the ways of Na'vi culture, which at first she hates being forced to do, but she eventually comes around on Jake and falls in love with him. This scene cements her bond with Jake, which is the driving force for the rest of the film. As for S.E.A., he hates that an outsider is being integrated into their culture, and this scene shows how far he's willing to take that hatred. Of course, this is justified within his character, as he is the destined future clan leader. He only comes around on Jake when he becomes the Turuk Makto, and Jake says he's willing to fight for the Na'vi. Grace and Trudy are briefly shown to explain bits of lore that act as a setup for future events. The strange properties of the flux vortex from earlier are caused by the Tree of Souls, which comes in use later, with it being both the last spot the Na'vi retreat to when their home is destroyed, and being used to screw up RDA flight tech. In showing Jake's proficiency with flight, it also helps show how he will help the Na'vi win the day, through aerial superiority to the RDA. They are flying on creatures native to the environment that are capable of clinging onto cliff faces on the side of the floating mountains, which is perfect for an ambush on vehicles incapable of detecting any life forms nearby. As for the visual presentation, what more can I say than it being absolutely stunning? The visual effects hold up exceptionally well, putting similar effects today to shame. The cinematography is gorgeous. The music brings a tear to my eye, and the color grading in particular is very well put together. I love how most of the scene is very vibrant and has a very colorful look, with warm tones during scenes of sunset and the campfire and home tree. It creates a feeling of joy and warmth during the scenes that are supposed to feel very comfortable, visually indicating how Jake feels more at home with the Na'vi at this point, only to crash back to the stark and bleak reality of the RDA facilities. This alien world feels like home, but his world with the other humans feels alien to him. Expert storytelling through clever editing, on top of an extremely solidly written scene. What I hope everyone can take away from this video is that a film does not need to be super complex, groundbreaking, or surprising to be a well-crafted story. Yes, sometimes a more complex story can be subjectively entertaining, but that does not mean the writing is objectively better. With a simpler story, there's simply just less room for screw-ups in the writing. The Last Jedi tried to be super subversive and game-changing, but fell completely flat with a number of scenes that make next to no sense. Likewise, on the opposite end of the spectrum, The Force Awakens tries to play everything super safe, even taking characters back to who they were before their main defining character arcs, which also fell flat. You can have a simple story that is great and a complex story that is a total dud. And this works the other way around. Avatar is a very simple film, yes, but that does not make the film lesser in quality. Some of the greatest films of all time are very simple. All simplicity leads to is general audience investment, which, yeah, will make a film super successful. I mean, come on, the first film almost made $3 billion not adjusted for inflation. Just consider that with this film, not a single moment is wasted. I chose this scene to dissect, as it is a perfect example of how seemingly basic scenes are used by the film to hammer home the brilliant world building, the solid story, the extremely well-rounded characters, and presenting all of this with some of the greatest visuals you will ever see in your life. While I may have not been a fan of this film historically, upon rewatching it, I fell in love with it. And with The Way of Water being so well written as well, I'm glad to call myself an Avatar fan. I, for one, cannot wait to see what James Cameron comes up with for the rest of the sequels. That is it for today's video. If you liked it, be sure to like and subscribe, as I plan on making more Avatar content in the future. Comment down below on what your favorite scene from the Avatar franchise is. I'm very excited to hear what you guys come up with. I also have a Patreon page, so if you want to support my channel, feel free to check it out. Patrons get early access to content, a special role in my Discord server, and higher tiers get to directly commission me for video topics. Links will be in the description and the pinned comment below. Also, on one final note, a huge thank you to my good friend Rowan T. Films for helping out with editing this video. He is a good friend of mine and has his own YouTube channel where he posts his short films. He is one hell of a talented filmmaker, so go check out his stuff. That is it for today, and I wish you all have a great day.